Okay, we're here at Packard Oaks Farm and with Mom and Dad at the farm, and it's the 22nd of January 2019. So we're going to talk a little bit about their second official mission call.
We were home just a few months, 4, maybe 5 or 6 months is all, and
from Japan.
From the Japan mission, yeah, and we got a phone call from Elder Larry Gibbons, who is an elder, Area Authority 70 here in Richardson, and by that time he was a 70 General Authority in Salt Lake, and he was on a mission in Russia, in Moscow, Russia, as
Europe East area.
Yeah, as a counselor to the area president. Mm-hmm. They had many missions. I think it was 18 missions that they were in charge of. And half of them were Russian missions. Right. The rest of them were countries that used to be Russia. And one of them included Georgia, the country of Georgia, which is just borders Russia in the Black Sea. Anyway, he called and says, well, you're ready to go on another mission. That was the words on the phone. Were you ready to go on a mission? And I said, well, what? Yeah, I guess so. What do you got in mind? And anyway... So he says, yeah, he said, and I told him, I says, we were just really tired of being so cold.
Sapporo was cold.
Yeah.
It was, honey, yeah.
Yeah, it's way, way north in Japan, and so it is cold. And the snow gets very deep in Japan.
Although the streets around the town or the buildings that you would use are heated. They're literally heated.
So sidewalks.
And the sidewalks. And so there's never any snow in that area. But other places, it's really
If you get out into the suburbs, yeah,
it's a lot.
It ends up with the snow plows, you know, it ends up only one lane getting through when you get out into the subdivisions. Okay. But anyway, he says, you know, we got a place.
Well, that has at least some palm trees, and so we thought, oh, that'll be warm, that'll be great, you know. So
and were you ready to? Were you both kind of on board about ready to serve another mission?
Well, we weren't ready or anything, but he talked us into it that we could really go, and we really liked our mission to Japan, and so we were ready to go on another mission, and. And everything was taken care of here at home. You made sure of that, Chad, that you took care of us. And we were still on salary from the office because it was our offices. We had at the time about 17, 18, 19 orthodontic offices throughout Dallas and Fort Worth. And they were doing well, and so we received income during our Japan mission and our Georgian mission. Well, the Georgian mission was very, very different than the Japan mission. It's a much, much more third world country-like, and all of them, we only had, well, in Georgia, we only had 2 branches, and they were both very, very small. Attendance usually was...
In the whole country?
In the whole country, 2 branches, and they were right in the capital city of Tbilisi. And
this is the Yerevan Armenian mission.
Yeah.
And that was part of the country of Georgia, which was next to Russia.
Okay, so Armenia is next to Russia. And it was one mission, but 2 different countries.
Yes, and Armenia is between Georgia and Turkey, and so
and
the mission home was there.
Also, Iran is right there.
Okay,
and
across the Black Sea is where the temple is. Came in when we were there in.
Ukraine?
Okay. That's right straight across the Black Sea.
Kiev.
Anyway.
Kiev, or they pronounce it 2 different ways.
Kiev. Yeah, they call it Kiev.
Yeah, 2 different ways.
We had just got off the airplane when we got over there, and he took us to the office and introduced us to everything, and the next day he set me apart as his counselor. It was just right off the bat.
That was with Ronald Dunn, President Ronald Dunn.
He was good. And
He and his wife Carol.
we served as his counselor the entire time that we were there, and actually took over as far as the members were concerned. He would come up and do all the missionary interviews. His wife loved coming up to Georgia. There's different shopping to do there and a lot of keepsakes to buy. It's a very old country,
City.
and had a lot of Russian influence. They still had some of the. In fact, I remember this one time, and the incomes was very, very low. They had a lot of unemployment, 65, 70% unemployment. And those that, let's go ahead and turn it off.
Sorry, everybody.
To give you an example, not only was there a lot of unemployment, but those who did have jobs made very little money.
Yeah.
Even the doctors and professors and things, and those who had good education. We had one little young girl, she was 30, that wanted to go on a mission, and they didn't have any money, and so we were helping her get her physicals together. And we went into this big 3-storied building with 30 doctors in it, all specialists, just like the Russians do. Every doctor only did one thing. Well, we ended up seeing 3 or 4 of those doctors just to get a physical. And the cost of it ended up, I think it was 30 lorry, which was their money. And it translated into $19 for 2 hours of physicals by 4 different doctors, specialists, and it was $19 is all that I had to pay for that whole thing. And I thought, no wonder everybody is not just broke.
Nobody's making any money.
Nobody's making any money. You can get a taxi. We had 3 members of our branch that had a taxi. That's how they made their money. You could go anywhere in town for $2, $3. And so the missionaries, they had no bikes and no cars, and neither did we. So we would take the taxi or the subway. The Russians built subway under their cities, and so many times we would take the subway when we wanted to go anywhere.
Yeah, and that was inexpensive as well.
They
yes.
They had ancestry worship. Is what they really believed in.
The Georgians do.
And they were Christian. So they were Georgian Orthodox Christians. And they had Armenian Orthodox Christians, and they had Russian Orthodox, and they were all separate churches.
Yep.
And Georgia claims to be the oldest of all of them, including older than the Catholic Church. That the 2 of the apostles, the original apostles of the Savior, went in there and taught and baptized and brought them into the church as Christians. That was Bartholomew and Matthias, I think, is their tradition. And it's just tradition. They don't have actual physical documentation, but that's what they believe. Their Orthodox Church is very similar to the Catholic Church, though.
Yes.
And some of those old churches were the highlight of.
Show the front of it first, Bob.
Were the highlight of the.
Now is that like a goblet, or is that big?
This one part of a goblet. It's not all of it. The bottom part was gone.
Okay.
But they had. Let me hand these to you, and this one gives you the outline of the country in this map.
Okay.
And like I say, it borders the Black Sea, and then off to the east is Azerbaijan, and we don't even have any missionaries in Azerbaijan, even today.
I know.
We had no Book of Mormon in the Georgian language. So the missionaries had to use Russian Book of Mormon or English Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And that's all they had. And even today, like Talmud says, even today we don't have it completely.
It's being worked on
Yeah,
and
we
translated.
we had a couple of our missionaries that were, oh gosh, I'm gonna forget. Anyway, they were from Kazakhstan.
Uh-huh.
We had a couple of missionaries from Kazakhstan. There was a large branch of the church, about 100 active members of the church that attended in Kazakhstan, and we had a couple of missionaries that served in our mission from that area. And in fact, one of them lives in San Antonio now.
No.
He went to BYU Hawaii, went through school. He lives in San Antonio, and he wanted to be one of those that translated it into Kazakhstan-ish, whatever the language is.
Whatever the language is. And it is a separate language, not only a separate language, but a separate alphabet.
Yeah.
It is not Russian, and it is not Armenian.
It's not Cyrillic, and it's not
It's
Armenian.
it's completely separate. This is some of their art, their old art, and this kind of represents Bartholomew and Matthias that went in. It's interesting. They went in pairs to do their missionary work. Is the same as today. But a lot of the artifacts that we saw, both in Armenia and in Georgia, is their old churches. Mm-hmm. And they are old. When you go in, they are, nearly all of them are not being used as churches today. They're just they're tourist places to stop. I mean, we saw so many of them. We kind of guessed what's coming up next. And President Dunn got all of the couples in his big van, and we went to all these places. We went all the way to Iran. Mm-hmm. We right there on the fence of separating Armenia from Iran, and
big barbed wire fences, really high, that you can't
get across, and you're not supposed to take pictures and on. But this is typical of the old Georgian Orthodox church, or Armenian. Some of these, but they're and they have a lot of artifacts that they have kept, and they became very valuable. I marked these pictures, and of course, like I said, they claim to be the oldest Christian church in the world. Yeah. I'm talking about in the world. Not in Russia or anything that before Constantine, that they were, well, they had to be, because that happened at 300. Yeah. And they claim it was the original 12 that came to them,
a couple of them,
and taught them. And so they're a notch ahead of the Catholic Church. They taught Christianity right from the get-go. And so they were already Christian, the Georgian people, for many years. But even with that, the missionaries struggled. It's very similar to the Catholicism. This is art, and these are all expensive pieces of art.
Does that show the 12?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think it's showing.
That is where the Savior is laid out, and so they're in the tomb.
This is not as bright.
It's
anyway.
Is your battery going down?
Maybe.
We went on a lot of sightseeing trips because it was so cheap to use a taxi, and he would take us where we wanted to. So we went all the way down there where Stalin
was born and raised, and his coach is still there. A big train-like coach is still there.
Mm-hmm. One of the main homes that he had was in Georgia. that he would go and stay at.
Now, you mentioned too that once you got to that country, that it made a lot of sense why there would be complete different cultures, and complete different languages.
Let me cover that, because they had the Greater Caucasus, which they are tall. 18,000 foot mountains that separated Georgia from Russia. There are only two roads even today. One right on the Black Sea, and the other one was a river that came up and ended up flowing from Russia through into Georgia and down into the Black Sea. And that's the only two ways for cars or military to get in. And it was just 6 months before when we got there, 6 months before is when Russia invaded Georgia.
You could see the bullet shots, where they shot on the buildings. You see where they burned the buildings and everything.
It caused a big problem, because the church pulled out all of our missionaries, which wasn't very many, 6, from Georgia. And the members, some of them just couldn't hold up, and they went inactive. They did nothing.
Yeah.
And it was hard to get them back again. That was one of our jobs, as we went out and we started bringing them back. I remember one of them was my elders quorum president, and he...
Hike.
Yeah, Hike. His name was Hike. And he... and we did reactivate him and baptized his wife. And
she played the piano.
Yeah. No, that was a different one.
That was different. No, honey, she did not join the church. She was a non-member the whole time.
Anyway, he
became active, and she would come.
Okay.
Anyway, he became my counselor, because we didn't have any Georgians that could handle it. And one time I told, when the other couple went home, who was the branch president, I told President Dunn that I don't know of anybody that can do it here. And I says, I think I have about 6 who are elders, and I can line them up, and you can interview them on your next trip up here. But I think, he says, I told him, I said, I think I'm the one that needs to be doing it. And so he came up and interviewed all 6, and says, Elder Packard, would you be the branch president? And so 6 months out of the time that we were there, I was the branch president of one of the branches. After we left, they combined the 2 branches, and now they just have one. And but we did have another couple. One of the experiences that should be told, and I'll let Talmadge tell it, is we were giving a fireside on Sunday nights, and all the missionaries would bring in their investigators, and we would hold it in either our apartment or the other couple apartment. And their apartment was on the 4th floor of their part of the building. They were in the same building as we are, but at separate entryways. And anyway, we finished up about 10:30 at night and got in the elevator. And that elevator is so old and so rickety that it stopped after a floor and a half, in between floors, and would not open the double doors.
How many were in the thing with you?
Just
she and I.
Just you two.
It only holds 4. The elevator only holds 4, and it was old.
I have my own missionary elevator story from Russia that Bethany's going to tell on ours, because she was in the thick of it.
Well, Talmadge was in the thick. And just lucky neither of us are claustrophobic, or we would have been in big trouble, because we were locked in there for
about an hour or 2.
Oh my God. About an hour, more like about an hour and a half.
And it was cold too. It was cold.
And we could not get double doors open. In fact, when we finally did get them open, she would yell.
Well, I would yell, help! Help! Because that's the only English that I didn't know Russian, so I couldn't say it in Russian.
You didn't say,
so nobody,
Ayudame!
Yeah, nobody, would even heard us. In fact, we had one couple that came out across the apartment there. They came out and then they just stood there and they didn't know.
Then they went back in.
They went back in. They couldn't help us. Well, the guy that took care of the elevators lived way out of town.
I know.
Way out of town.
And they couldn't get a hold of him.
And so anyway, finally they had, well, and in fact, the missionary couple, they heard somebody, and they said, "Well, that's the Packards. They're in trouble."
So they came out and came down and tried to open it.
And then I think that there was just another man finally
With a crowbar of
or
some
crowbar or
kind.
something
And,
that came.
and he was able to somehow open it enough so we could climb up and out and walk down. It's the building itself and the hallway and the stairs were all very, very old.
Yeah.
No paint.
I can
no,
picture it. It's just the
Oh,
same as in Russia.
Well,
They don't beautify anything.
One time, we had gotten separated from going to Relief Society and coming home. He left with the other sister's husband, and I stayed there with her.
Yeah.
And anyway, we finally went home, or got home. We came on the subway, and then we finally walked to the apartment. And I tell you, I was almost mortified. I mean, I prayed and I prayed. Heavenly Father, you've got to help
7
me.
floors up, and it's
And
up.
I wasn't well either.
It's up
I
twice
had
for each floor.
I
Up
had
here
to-
and then.
And plus, the drunks would sometimes be there, kind of off to
the
the
bar.
side, drunk and in trash and stuff.
And where's
But
he right
did.
out trying to.
I prayed,
The
Heavenly
elevators.
Father, you've got to get me there. I got to get there. Because it was so bad.